I'm here with K-pop columnist and music journalist, Jeff Benjamin. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet up with me.
Yeah.
I'm excited to interview you.
Yes, me too.
So, when did you first decide that you wanted to enter the entertainment business, and was that your initial goal, or did you kind of get led that direction?
Yeah, I think like most, teenagers, you're trying to figure out what your major is going to be in high school, and just very much by chance, I went to my best friend at the time in college or in high school rather. She was really interested in New York University, and I think just really I didn't know where I wanted to go. I'm from Chicago. I was thinking I wanted to go somewhere in the Midwest or University of Illinois, like my dad. So when it was just happened to be that NYU was visiting our high school, and they were having an information session, and I think she just asked me to come with her, and I was like, great, I can get out of class. But I was looking through the different majors and saw that there was a music business major, and I always loved music. I always loved thinking about music, talking about music. There were so many ways that I wanted to work with music in the future, and so I thought, oh, music business, that's like a safe way of combining business and a
Yeah.
college major. And so I thought I wanted to do music business, and that was my first kind of foray into that world, and kind of thinking that's what I wanted to do, although in the end I switched it up a bit.
Yeah. And were you pursuing internships and stuff in college that would lead you to where you are today?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was so lucky because I initially started my first internship. Well, I remember I applied for an internship at like Universal Music Group, which was great, but for some reason I couldn't take it. And then I interned at Bad Boy Records under, P. Diddy himself, which was great, and very eye-opening time. But I definitely knew it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. It was, I think it was frustrating to me because there were so many there were so many artists I wanted to talk about and write about and think about and things like that. But when you work at a specific record label, you can only work under those artists. And if things get delayed, like this one album I was working on kept getting delayed. It was Diddy Dirty Money, which I really loved that project, but there wasn't a lot going on with the actual project, and it kept getting delayed. And it was frustrating because I was like, oh, there's so much I want to do and things like that. And then eventually I ended up interning for Billboard and found like I was so much happier and so much, and I had this, all artists. You could talk about all artists, and if I was lucky, I could write about some, British pop stars, K-pop stars, Japanese pop stars, whatever it was, so that I could eventually, get my hands into all these different things rather than being confined to just a
To
small
one genre of music.
group of artists. Exactly, yeah. So it was definitely the internships that kind of led me to figuring out what I wanted to do. Yeah.
And once you graduated, what was your process in terms of where you were going to go? I know you work for about 20 different places right now.
Oh yeah.
It seems like 20.
I hope
Maybe
so.
a few less, but not many.
Yeah.
And you work with Billboard, you work with AOL Build, you work with a ton of places.
Yeah, I think after college, it was, well, I was lucky that I interned at Billboard throughout my whole senior year of college, and just like stayed in close contacts with like everyone there. And even though I wasn't interning, I had my little specialties with K-pop or other international things, or they knew certain artists that I liked. They knew I really liked The Voice at the time. They knew I liked Christina Aguilera. They'd always hit me up for a Christina Aguilera piece or something. It was just staying in touch with those contacts, and then those
Super
editors.
important.
Yeah, those editors who end up going to different, publications themselves, or they had recommended me to different things. So, after college, I was just ready to hustle. I came back to New York. I went back home for a little bit, which was good, just to, reset, and, there was a funeral, so it was just like nice timing, I guess.
Thank you for dying.
I
whoever
mean,
it was.
yeah, I guess so. But I had an assignment. I remember it was 21, this K-pop girl group, and they were coming for their first U.S. concert, first like a big arena show, and I was gonna be backstage, and then we're gonna do a video interview afterwards. And I just remembered being like, okay, this is my assignment that's going to pay for my ticket to get me back to New York.
Mhm.
I had my best friend Anna, who let me stay on her couch for as long as I needed, and I was just like, let's just see. I have to at least go for it. I was fine at home. I was doing some freelancing from Chicago and things like that, but it dawned on me, it dawned to the people I talked to that I think you needed to be back in my space, back in New York, to be able to really go for it.
Mhm.
And yeah, just spent kind of 6 months hustling, freelancing, trying to meet whoever I could, and then eventually, yeah, I got my first like staff job at Fuse TV,
Mhm.
which was it is a music network. And I got to learn a lot there. I was a staff writer, eventually became an editor, editorial director for 5 years there. At the same time, got to be Billboard's K-pop columnist when they relaunched the site in 2013. So everything kind of came together at the top of 2013, but that
Yeah.
year, 2012, was, lots of ups and downs and worries and stresses. But
Did you ever think of packing it in, or you didn't have that in you to do that?
I don't know. I guess that thought never even occurred to me. Like of course everyone gets nervous, and if things had, if it had been a year or 2 years of like really being like money trickling in,
Mhm.
like because I had a good amount of savings, which was helpful, of course, but yeah, I think it was never. I never crossed my mind to pack it in. I think I was just like, I gotta go for it, and I think hopefully that mindset kept me going.
What led you into the K-pop arena? 'Cause
Yeah.
that's one of your main things right now. And
Yeah.
it's huge.
Yes. Yeah, no.
Keep putting out new groups.
Right. No, it started just as being a fan of it first and foremost. It was, I think, K-pop and the Korean music industry in particular. They were very interested in America. There was a lot of potential crossover moments happening from those artists at that time around when I was just getting started. 2009, I think, is when it really started happening. The initial tricklings happened,
Mhm.
and then it was really good because 2011, 2012 was when more things were happening. Billboard started their own Korea sect of it. Billboard Korea launched. They launched a K-pop chart. Psy and Gangnam Style in 2012 happened, which was the best thing for my career. That same
Mhm.
summer of all this craziness happening. I still remember my Billboard editor calling me and being like, "Do you know Psy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know Psy." And he's like, "Oh, have you seen this Gangnam Style video?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Okay, can you write a piece about it?" And and then slowly but surely became this huge thing. So it was on one hand being a fan, lots of writers and people whose music tastes I respected were getting into it, but then also it was good timing, I think, with the industry itself. So
Yeah, well, that's important to write about people that you're interested in yourself.
Yeah.
If you're writing about somebody you don't care about, your true excitement may not come through.
Oh yeah, and that was something I was so surprised by when I started writing. I think it's kind of changed a bit, but I remember going to Fuse, and there were so many people who it was a mainstream top 40 music station, but there were so many writers and things like who didn't actually like pop music or and I was like, really, you guys, this is awesome. We get to write about
Yeah.
pop stars all day. We're so lucky, but I don't know where those people are today, but but I don't know. It was just
That's
always
when you sit there and think there's so many more people out there that are looking for work that would kill to have your job.
No, and it's just so unfortunate, and you kind of hope that those
Mhm.
people who do really love it eventually get those opportunities too. But yeah.
With K-pop, it's really hit an explosive level at this point.
Yes.
And you're quite well known, especially in Korea. What is that like, being like an international superstar in terms
Oh
of
my gosh.
just being, from covering them?
Well, I think there's a lot more work to be done before we can use those terms.
I'm getting
But-
paid tens and tens of cents for saying that. So.
Yeah. But I think I'm humbled and honored, to even be like recognized in that way. But like I think it's like a point of mutual respect, right? Is that like I think for the longest time, it's crazy, right? Because we, in America, we don't have this representative alternative Asian pop star. You know, we don't have a Middle Eastern pop star, but that's a whole nother story. But it's there's still so much to be done with recognition and visibility, and trying to find, you know, make, you know, a better terms of recognition and visibility and, you know, equality in that way. So I think just the fact that I was even a person who took this, you know, music industry that was making huge inroads around the world. You know, K-pop was really big. It still is very big in Japan, which is the second biggest industry in the world. You know, there's something I think definitely to be said for recognizing and kind of putting on a similar, because that was my whole thing, is like not to make it seem like K-pop was this odd outlying thing, but show like why it was an equal thing, why these pop stars are to be considered on the same level as our American pop stars or Western pop stars, whatever it might be. So I think, you know, it was just hopefully a point of mutual respect and trying to, you know, honor and understand that we're all very similar and, you know, we all connect in different ways. So I hope people are picking up on that, and I hope people like my writing, and I hope people like how I do interviews and things like that.
Does that add a little bit to the pressure, knowing that you're trying to also bring awareness to K-pop artists here in America?
You know, I mean, I don't know if it's pressure necessarily. I mean, I've always rooted for the underdog. You know, I love. I mean, I was such a, you know, even when I was like 5 or 6, you know, I was probably such a snob because like I would go up to. I remember going up to kids on the playground and asking them who their favorite artists were because I loved Hootie and the Blowfish for some reason. I don't even know if people talk about them these days, but you know,
they're just
it's
on tour.
Well,
Well, they are on tour. My friend just went.
Oh, really?
Like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, great! I'm so glad that Hootie is still, you know, active and well. But you know, the kids on the playground, you know, they didn't have a favorite band at that time. They would say something like the Beatles or things like that because I think that's just what they thought they were supposed to say, or that's what their parents said. But I was like, oh, I like Hootie and the Blowfish. I was like, oh, where can I find, you know, my Hootie and the Blowfish fans? But you know, just always wanting to prove. I just always had this love of trying to prove, you know, who I thought deserved a little more love and a little more, you know, recognition in that way. So I don't know if it's a pressure. I think it's almost like a good challenge, or like a pressure to do better, I think, too.
Yeah.
You know, just wanting to show them more and show them in their, you know, true colors and things like that.
How do the K-pop fans differ from fans of boy bands here? I mean, I've seen some video from AOL where they're hanging off scaffolding and all that kind of stuff. So, so I know that's, but I mean, the American pop bands get the same thing. So is there a difference?
Well, I think they're just. Oh, I mean, it's really amazing. The fandom is amazing. And I don't think I'd even have like my career if it weren't for like this fandom in particular. But you know, I think what's really special about the K-pop fans is that they're really, you know, it takes a lot to be able to connect into a music scene or a music language or whatever it is, or rather a music that's not in your language and in your language. And the international community is really amazing in the sense that when a song comes out, they will, you know, there are translators ready to go, not only in English, but in, you know, Portuguese and Spanish and French and all over the place. These fans will not only translate things, but, you know, find out which member is singing which part. They are like ready to go in terms of, but the K-pop scene is very competitive too in its own way. There's these daily music programs that are almost kind of like a live TRL, where they have a countdown and you know, everyone performs if you're promoting a song, and at the end they name a number one, and you know, it's part fan voting, part how well your single's performing. So there's very much all this like competition kind of baked into the scene itself. So all I would say is just that they're very plugged in, very digital, very connected, and just also, you know, I think very open-minded too.
Do the K-pop bands, pardon me, have a shelf life like the U.S. boy bands, where sometimes they'll be like really good for like 1 or 2 years and then they slowly fade into obscurity, or?
I think it's changing actually. I think for, you know, I think with every kind of generation of K-pop stars, it changes a bit, which has really been interesting to watch. I think in the early days of K-pop, it was almost better to call it quits at your height. You know, a lot of bands would kind of hit the 5-year mark and say, you know, we're gonna end with a farewell concert, and you know, kind of, take advantage of kind of the height of where they are. As things have gone on, it used to be kind of this 5-year expiration point. Now it's more like 7 years is when things kind of get a little rocky, thanks to, I think, the international fans and being able to tour internationally and things like that. But more and more acts are spending, going on 10 years, growing, larger in that sense. It's been, yeah, I would say 7 years is a little, which is a pretty good
The
run
7 year
for,
itch, right?
yeah, more or less. But yeah, just things like that. But I think it's getting better, and I think, especially as the international fandom is catching on quicker. And
Do you
things
think
like
that's because of social media that the fandom catches on in different
Yeah,
parts of the world?
I think so for sure. If you look at like a group like BTS, they're one of the main points of their story is that they did kind of have a larger international following before Korea kind of caught on, and BTS spent a lot of time touring internationally. And then eventually Korea caught on and things like that. But social media is definitely the driver in all that for sure.
Who have you been with since the beginning, and now they're like, just way over the top now? In terms of success, not in terms of their behavior and attitude.
The divas.
No tea on this interview. I don't want you like thrown out of the fandom.
No, I mean, well, let me think. There's been a lot of changes for sure. I mean, BTS is a good example just in terms of they came from a small company. I still remember, seeing them for the first time in 2014 at this K-pop festival called KCON, where they were the youngest artists on the bill. Definitely, I remember seeing, they had a really big response from the audience, and then, seeing them where they are now is really amazing to see. In terms of, though, an artist I've been with from the very beginning, I mean, there's this band in particular, their name is New East. They debuted in 2012, and I really liked them from debut. They had this really electro pop sound, but it was a song. Their debut single talked about school bullying, actually, which is kind of remarkable in that way. But they kind of went through ebbs and flows, kind of ups and downs as a group, and for a while it was kind of unsure where they were going to be able to make it. But then they appeared on this music competition show called Produce 101, where 101 K-pop hopefuls kind of come together and compete for a spot in this boy band, and they were, kind of considered still to be rookies at that point, the individual members themselves. So they went on the show. It became a career revitalizer in that way. The fans themselves also made sure to take advantage of this momentum and started streaming their songs more, buying their songs. It was really amazing to watch, and now they're one of the top boy bands, and I got to see them in LA just a little bit ago, and yeah, I'm just proud of watching them and knowing what they went through, and then eventually, to see them kind of be this band killing it right now.
Do you think that kind of show needs to come back over here to the States? I know they had the Boy Band Project, I'm sorry, not the Boy Band Project, Boy Band on ABC, and that group has just released a new album and is going on tour. So like, if you stick with it, you get a following, and do you think that because American Idol is not going to be for groups?
No.
The Voice is not going to be for groups.
No. I think, I was very excited about that boy band show in particular, and I love In Real Life. I think they're a great band, and I've met them, and I love that they have some, they're a diverse boy band, and they, their first single, I think it was Tattoo, How About You, is such a good pop song. I wish more people heard it. But that format, though, in particular, I thought it was just a little outdated as a TV show concept. I feel like I heard about it, and then they whittled down all the different members, and things like that to eventually, and I thought it was just To me, I think what's really great about the K-pop TV shows and the Korean TV shows, especially the reality shows, is that there's a big emphasis on social media and digital connection. And so, like, every person, every one of these 101 people who are vying for a spot in this group got like a YouTube video or YouTube channel or you know, social media following in that way. And it was really, really well done. And I think, you know, in the future, we're going to see more of that kind of come over here. You know,
Yeah.
there might be some things in the works, but
I feel like there's an added pressure in that respect because you have to keep up with your Instagram page
Yeah.
now. You have to keep up with your YouTube page, and it's not just
Yeah.
channel rather. It's not just posting a picture on Instagram. Now you have to do live videos and stories and all this other stuff. It's just like, where does it end? But everybody gets so much hungrier for content.
Yeah.
The more you put out, the more people want. So it's like, that's almost like a second full-time job for these artists.
oh, for sure.
And actors, anybody else, I mean, really, but like,
Yeah.
you know, there's such a fascination with celebrity in this country.
Oh yeah, totally. But you know, and there's a good side and a bad side to it too. But I think, you know, if you're able to kind of take an opportunity, right, of being on this TV show, you could be one of 101 people, but you are good at connecting with people and able to, you know, talk to them and give them the things that they want. You know, that could lead you, even if you don't make the group, you know, you could end up having like
Oh, absolutely.
a
Just get a
career,
following,
you
yeah.
know, entirely of itself. You know, sometimes those people end up in the better situation ultimately anyway. So yeah, it's yeah, definitely good and bad. But yeah, ultimately it's
Yeah.
kind of this whole nother side gig basically.
Do you feel that do you cover American music as well?
Yeah, I do. I
Okay.
do. I know the K-pop thing is taken over, but
is there an American band that you think is underrated and thinks really going to hit their stride and blow up bigger than they are now?
band like a group or it could
Yeah,
be
like-
okay.
Or a single person.
Yeah.
A single person.
Single. I mean,
Artist.
I do like Why Don't We? They're another kind of boy band kind of in the scene. I mean, they've had a top 10 album, which is good. And I actually really like their new single. I think it's called What Am I? And you know, I was a bit, you know, they're sort of 5 YouTubers who, you know, people who kind of had social media followings on their own but came together for this group. But I wasn't convinced about them until I actually saw them live. And it was just happened to be, I was at their record label, Atlantic Records. They were having sort of an introduction cocktail party sort of thing for them. And they sang live, but it was a cappella, or it was stripped down, and they literally like mixed their vocals on stage, like in real time, and it was so good and so well done, and they were so in sync with one another that
No pun
I was
intended,
so,
right?
I mean, right, I mean, very different kind of in sync, but they were so in tune with one another, and I was so impressed by that, and I was like, that's what people need to see. They need to see this sort of you know, the musicianship. You know, I think boy bands, unfortunately, and I think it's kind of wrong, get a sort of a unfortunate rap, you know, for not being musical or musicians in that way. And I think these guys really did like, I was convinced after finally seeing them. You know, I thought the single was good and I thought things like that, but seeing them live, I was like, oh, these guys like really get it, and you know, they've done well. I hope it works out for them. You know, I do like in real life too. I think it's awesome that they have some diversity in their group and things like that. And I think that's also the future as well. Is not, you know, no, you know,
Cookie cutter.
yeah,
boy band.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's less about making sure you have the cute one and the blonde one and the, you know, the big vocal one, but rather what is a group of collective people that work well together. And you know, that could be 7 people, 13 people, 4 people, whatever it
Yeah.
might
Do
be.
you really think that would work though in an American boy band? Have that many people like
Well-
BTS or some of the other K-pop bands?
Well, in the West, we have such big egos that I don't think, you know, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But you know, and it's definitely an East versus West, you know, kind of mindset about putting the group before the individual. In the West, we definitely put the individual before the group or the family or whatever it might be. But you know, I think it'd be very remarkable to see 13 people, you know, on stage together, you know, killing it all together.
Like Broadway music.
I'm all for that. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's cool.
What are some of your other aspirations? I mean, it doesn't seem like you're giving this up anytime soon, but
Well,
would you like to create your own content in terms of an online magazine or any? No, what did
Well,
I hit something? Wait a minute. Let me get my resume out of my back.
I think this year in particular, so I've been actually fully freelance for a year now, and at first just kind of wondering if I could actually do it and be able to stay relevant and be able to keep working and things like that. But it's been a good year. Been a year of lots of different opportunities and things like that, and trying to figure out what exactly I want to show as a writer, communicator, whatever it could be, person in and of himself. But I think I really, I observe a lot of things, in Korea, and I'll see a tweet of mine. I Google. Well, actually, Google's not that popular in Korea. They have something called Naver, and I search myself on Naver sometimes, and I'll see that a tweet of mine will be turned into a press release, which is a very interesting position to be in.
Kind of weird, yeah.
And ultimately, when that happens, I'm just making money for Twitter or for Instagram or things like that. So how can I own my thoughts and my platforms and my if that's going to happen anyway, I'm thinking a lot about how I can own that platform and create my own platform too in that way too. So I think there's cool things in the works just in terms of making it more but also there's a bit of a limitation, right, that I can do on whether it's a billboard or it's a whatever it might be, or a Forbes or GQ or whatever it might be. There's certain things, there's a lot of topics in my head, especially with K-pop, that I want to talk about and I want to get into, but it doesn't totally fit into these different, places. And so I'm thinking, too, like, where can I have a place where I can kind of get into these quirky little things that I think about? So yeah, kind of, online magazine's an interesting way to put it, but yeah, I think there'll be some good stuff to show in the next month or so. And then, a dream of mine, I think most writers' dreams is kind of to take their writings and ideas to larger platforms. So I've joined this new TV show called We K-pop. It's a show filmed in Korea, but it's supposed to. It almost kind of takes. And it was so great. I got to talk with the different producers and whatnot, and kind of help develop this idea. And it's the things I love about interviews, going in depth with artists, having fun with them, learning new things about them, kind of seeing new sides about them, but brought to a visual platform. Having the fans around, it's just like Build series where the fans are literally surrounding us. It's really, really fun and really nice, and I'm really proud of that show, and hopefully getting to be able to do more opportunities like that on camera. But yeah, I think there's books in the works too.
I was going to bring that up. Do you think you would write a book as a quote-unquote expert, or I actually signed a book deal and I just can't tell you, so
I think there's going to be good stuff in the future for sure. I think I was talking about 2009. It's a very interesting time, right? Because it's been basically a decade of K-pop with Jeff, and maybe that's a title I'm working with right now. But but I think rather than just write a recap or a history book or something like that, like, I'm not really that interested in that. I think those things exist, and there's so many BTS books too, or there's so many things. I don't know, I just really want to bring a different perspective and just show different things. I really, I have my novel idea that I want to work on too, and even though that's not something I'm particularly, or rather, creative writing is a new kind of world for me too, but a novel loosely based on my experiences, I think, would be really, really cool, and I think it's something I'm working on too. And
You think you're working on it? You're like, it'll be out in November.
I gotta write it, but I have
on your plane
envisioned
trips
it.
back and forth, you can write it.
I hope so.
Do you think that it is easier for an American group to go overseas, like to Korea or Japan, and break in over there than vice versa? Because I know, like, I'm a fan of D. Capella, and they're over in Japan touring now, and they're very popular over there. We're here, it's like, even though they're Disney, they're not quite as, they haven't gained as much traction as they have just going on tour in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is just, just the way the world currently works. I mean,
Oh, very
it's
true.
our music industry is so influential, and it's messed up, or it's not. I don't want to say it's messed up, but like it's interesting that English music and American music, British music, Canadian music, whatever you want to call it, can very easily be exported to a country whose English isn't their prime language, and an artist, a big pop artist, can tour anywhere in the world, but vice versa, it's not really the same.
Right.
Even looking at the amount of non-English songs that have been number one in America, even specifically, I think maybe it's been a dozen, maybe it's been 15. I mean, throughout the entire chart history,
Right, like Despacito.
that's crazy to think about. Versus so many English songs can have number ones around the world, and so it's just, I think it's just kind of the way the music industry in the world works right now.
Mhm.
I don't think it's going to be like that forever.
Hopefully not.
I get a lot of hope from the strides the K-pop scene's made, strides the Latin music community's made. There's so much exciting stuff happening in Latin music that I love watching too, and I think it's gonna change. I think it's all gonna change a bit, but yeah.
Awesome. Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It's
Ah,
fantastic.
yes,
Could talk to you for another hour and a half.
Oh,
but
yes.
Alas, I don't think anyone will watch a 2-hour interview.
Hey.
You never know. Your K-pop fans over there might.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.